today we are going to be talking about the properties of midsegments in triangles and in trapezoids. First, we need to remember what a midsegment actually is. Okay, a midsegment of a triangle, for example, is a segment that connects the midpoints of two sides of the triangle. Okay, so remember the term midpoint. Okay, when you have a point that's halfway between both endpoints of the triangle. Okay, so here we have midpoint D and we have midpoint F. Okay, and the midsegment is the line, the segment that connects the two. So this blue line here that I'm highlighting is the midsegment, right, because it connects two of the midpoints. Technically, we have other midsegments in this triangle, right, because we could have the midpoint here on this side. So technically, this would be a midsegment here in red, and also this one in green would be another midsegment. Okay, so both are, or all three of those are midsegments in our triangle here. Okay, so take a minute and just like refresh your memory of what a midsegment is. It connects two midpoints. All right, our first conjecture here today is the three midsegments conjecture. Okay, so kind of like the picture I had drawn, what happens when we have three midsegments, all three midsegments of the triangle? Okay, and the three midsegments of a triangle actually divides the triangle into four congruent triangles. Okay, so for example, I have all my midpoints labeled G, F, and E. Okay, so I have midpoint and I have that labeled with the correct markings here. Okay, same with F, I have my midpoint and E is a midpoint. Okay, then we have our midsegments. Okay, we have midsegment here, midsegment here, and midsegment here. So we have all three drawn. Okay, and if you notice my congruent markings, so let's start on the triangle in the lower left here. We have a congruent marking of 1, and we have a congruent marking of 2 here. Okay, so that means this side, this midsegment, would have to be 1, 2, 3. Okay, and then if we look on the lower right over here, we have 2 congruent markings and 3 congruent markings. So that would mean this one would have to be a congruent marking of 1. Okay, and then we have our final triangle up at the top here. We have congruent marking of 1 and then congruent marking of 3. So that would mean this one would have to have a congruent marking of 2 on it. So notice all 4 of these triangles here have the same sides, right? They have a 1 congruent marking on each one, a 2 congruent marking, and a 3 congruent marking. So that makes them, all 4 triangles are congruent. Okay, so that's what's unique about when we have all 3 midsegments drawn in a triangle. Okay, so take a minute and draw this picture next to your conjecture. Next, we have the triangle midsegment conjecture. The triangle midsegment conjecture says that if we have one midsegment of a triangle drawn, okay, so DE, that's a midsegment. Okay, then it is parallel to that third side. Okay, so notice I have my parallel arrows. Okay, then it is half the length of the third side. Okay, so that means if we have the base is 20, okay, then that would mean my midsegment would have to be 10. Okay, that midsegment is half of its opposite side, or that third side. Okay, so take a minute to write that down. Our last conjecture of the day is the trapezoid midsegment conjecture. And some people forget that trapezoids can also have a midsegment in it. Okay, so notice I have my midsegment drawn. Okay, I have my midpoint on this side. I have my midpoint on this side. Okay, and we know here, I mean, obviously, because I have it drawn, we know that the bases are parallel to each other. Okay, and if we have a midsegment drawn in, that midsegment is also parallel to the bases. Okay, and then also we know we can find the measurement of that midsegment, and it is equal to the average of the two bases. Okay, so for example, we'll keep it simple numbers. Okay, if let's say this base is 10, we'll say centimeters, and this one is 20 centimeters. Okay, the average would be taking 10 plus 20 and dividing it by 2 would give us our midsegment. Okay, so 10 plus 20 is 30. Dividing it by 2, the midsegment would be 15 centimeters. Okay, so it's the average of the two bases. Okay, take a minute, draw all this out. Okay, it might be helpful to also have this little equation here if you want me to, maybe I'll write it for all midsegments. Let's see here. So if we take base 1 plus base 2 divided by 2, that will give us our midsegment. Okay, because sometimes they're going to give you the midsegment and you'll have to work backwards to find one of the bases. Okay, so this formula might be helpful to have also written down next to your picture.